The morning sun was just coming up over New Busan Colony when the ships appeared in the sky. They were big and dark, shaped like giant bugs with metal wings. The people on the ground looked up and pointed. Some started to run. 8-year-old Hannah Kim was playing in her backyard when she saw the first ship. She stopped pushing her toy truck and looked up. The ship was making a loud humming sound that hurt her ears. But Hannah did not run like the other children. She just watched Hannah get inside. Her mother called from the house. Her voice sounded scared. But before Hannah could move, a bright blue light came down from the ship. It wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She tried to run, but her legs would not work. The light was pulling her up into the sky. The last thing Hannah saw was her mother running toward her with tears on her face when Hannah woke up. She was in a small metal room. The walls were gray and cold. There was a strange smell in the air, like old fish and metal. She sat up and looked around. Other children were in the room with her. Some were crying, some were sitting quietly in the corners. "Are you okay?" a voice asked. Hannah turned to see a boy about her age. He had dark hair and kind eyes. "I'm Jinwoo," he said. "What's your name, Hannah?" she said quietly. "Where are we?" "On an alien ship," Jinwoo said. "They took us from our homes. My mom was making lunch when they came." Hannah looked around the room again. She counted 12 children. The youngest looked about 6 years old. The oldest was maybe 13. They all looked scared and confused. "What do they want with us?" Hannah asked. Jinwoo's face got sad. "I heard them talking. They speak a language I don't know, but I think they want to sell us." Hannah felt cold inside, but she did not cry. Instead, she started to think. She looked at the walls, the door, the small window high up near the ceiling. She listened to the sounds coming from outside the room. The door opened with a loud hiss. A creature walked in. It was tall and thin, with green skin that looked like a lizard. It had 4 arms and big yellow eyes. It was wearing a black uniform with silver buttons. The creature looked at all the children. It said something in a language that sounded like clicking and hissing. Then it pointed at Jinwoo and made a motion for him to stand up. Jin-Woo shook his head and moved back against the wall. The creature made an angry sound and reached for him with one of its 4 arms. "No," Hannah said. She stood up and walked between the creature and Jinwoo. "Leave him alone." The creature looked down at her. It made a sound that might have been laughing. It said something in its clicking language. Then it pushed Hannah aside with one hand and grabbed Jin-Woo. But Hannah was watching everything. She saw how the creature moved. She saw which arm was stronger. She saw that it kept its weapon on its left side. She saw that it was not very careful because it thought children were weak. The creature took Jinwoo out of the room. The door closed behind them. The other children started crying louder. "Don't cry," Hannah said. "Crying won't help us." A girl with long black hair looked at her. "I'm Yuki," she said. "What do you think we should do?" Hannah sat down in the middle of the room. "First, we need to learn about this place. We need to watch and listen. We need to find out how many of them there are and what they want." "But we're just kids," said a small boy. "We can't fight them." Hannah looked at him with her dark eyes. "Who said anything about fighting? There are other ways to win." Jinwoo came back an hour later. He was crying and had a small cut on his arm. The creature pushed him into the room and left. "What did they do?" Yuki asked. "They took some of my blood," Jinwoo said, "and they made me walk in a circle while they watched. I think they were testing me." Hannah helped Jinwoo sit down. "Did you see anything while you were out there?" Jinwoo wiped his eyes. "Yes, I saw more of them. They're called Vorthins. I heard them say that word, and I saw a part of the ship. It's very big." "How many Vorthins did you see?" "Maybe 10 or 12. They were working on computers and machines." Hannah nodded. She was making a picture in her mind of the ship and the creatures. "What else?" "They were talking about selling us to something called the Kepler station. They said we would make good pets for rich aliens." The children looked scared when they heard this, but Hannah just nodded again. "Good, now we know what they want and where they're taking us." "But how does that help us?" a young girl asked. Hannah smiled, but it was not a happy smile, because now we can make a plan. Over the next few hours, more children were taken out and brought back. Each time, Hannah asked them what they saw. She learned that there were 15 Vorthins on the ship. She learned that they slept in shifts. She learned that they thought human children were weak and stupid. "They keep laughing at us," said a boy named Hyensu. "They think we're like baby animals." "Good," Hannah said. "Let them think that." "Why is that good?" Yuki asked. Hannah looked around at all the children. They were all looking at her now, waiting for her to explain. She was the youngest one in the room, but somehow she had become their leader. "Because," Hannah said, "if they think we're weak and stupid, they won't watch us carefully. They won't expect us to do anything smart, and that gives us an advantage." "What kind of advantage?" Jinwoo asked. Hannah pointed to the small window near the ceiling. "That window is too small for an adult to fit through, but a child could fit. And look at the door. See how it opens. It's made for creatures with 4 arms, but we have 2 arms and we're smaller. We can move in ways they can't." The children looked where she was pointing. They started to understand. "Also," Hannah continued, "they don't know much about humans. They think children are the weakest humans, but children learn faster than adults. We can change and adapt quicker. We can hide in small places and we can work together. She looked around the room at all the faces watching her. My dad used to tell me stories about Earth's history. He said that humans survived because they were good at working together and thinking of new ways to solve problems. He said that's what made humans special. But we're still just kids, Hyensu said. Hannah's dark eyes got very serious. Yes, we are kids, but we're human kids. And these aliens are about to learn that human kids are not pets. We're not toys, we're not weak. She stood up and walked to the center of the room. We're going to show them what human children can do when they're angry. We're going to show them that they made a big mistake when they took us from our families. The other children looked at her with wide eyes. Something in Hannah's voice made them feel different, less scared, more angry. What's the plan? Yuki asked. Hannah smiled again. This time it was a dangerous smile. First, we're going to learn everything we can about this ship and these creatures. Then, we're going to take control of this ship. And then, we're going to go home. How can we take control of a whole ship? Jinwoo asked. Easy, Hannah said. We're going to be smarter than they are. We're going to use their own ship against them, and we're going to do it so well that they'll never underestimate human children again. Outside the room, the Vorthins continued their work. They were happy with their catch. 12 young humans would bring a good price at the slave markets. They were planning what to buy with their money. None of them noticed that the human children, who had stopped crying. None of them saw the dangerous light that had appeared in an 8-year-old girl's eyes. None of them realized that they had not captured prey. They had awakened a predator. The next day started early. The Vorthins brought food that looked like green paste and tasted worse. Most of the children could not eat it, but Hannah forced herself to swallow some. She needed to stay strong. We have to eat, she told the others, even if it tastes bad. We need energy for what's coming. While they ate, Hannah listened carefully to the Vorthins talking outside their room. She started to learn some of their words. Keth meant food, Vel meant money, Thrak meant stupid. They used that word a lot when talking about the children. They think we're dumb animals, Hannah whispered to Jinwoo. That's perfect. When a Vorthin guard came to take another child for testing, Hannah watched everything he did. She saw that he pressed his hand on a panel to open the door. She saw that he carried a small device that made a beeping sound. She saw that he always looked tired, like he was bored with his job. The guard took a little girl named Sumin. She was only 7 years old and very scared. Hannah felt angry watching her go, but she kept her face calm. Getting angry without a plan would not help anyone. I want to help her, Yuki said. We will, Hannah promised. But first we need to know more. When Solomon came back, she was crying, but between her tears she told Hannah important things. I saw a big room with computers, she said, and I saw where they keep their tools. There was also a room with lots of pipes and wires. That must be the engine room, Hyensu said. He was good with machines. My dad worked on spaceships. He taught me about engines. Hannah nodded. What else, Soman? The Vorthin who took me was talking to another one. They said we would reach something called Kepler Station in 3 days. They seemed excited about selling us 3 days. It was not much time. But Hannah was not worried. She had a plan growing in her mind. That night, when the lights went dim, Hannah started teaching the other children a new game. It looked like a simple clapping game, but it was really a way to send messages without making noise. Clap once for yes, twice for no, she whispered. Tap your knee once for danger, twice for safe. Pat your head if you see a guard coming. The children learned quickly. Soon they were talking to each other across the room without making a sound. The Vorthans walking by their room just saw children playing. They never guessed the children were planning something. On the second day, Hannah made her first real move. When the guard came to take Jinwoo for testing, Hannah spoke to him in broken Vorthon words she had learned. Please, great one, she said, in their clicking language. Friend scared I go instead. The guard stopped and stared at her. He had never heard a human child speak Vorthon before. He made a sound that might have been laughing. The little Thrak speaks, he said to his partner. How funny. But Hannah saw something else in his eyes, surprise, maybe even a little respect. The guard was starting to think human children might be smarter than he thought. I go with friend, Hannah asked, pointing to Jin-Woo. The guard thought for a moment. Then he nodded. Come, both Thraks. As they walked through the ship, Hannah memorized everything. She counted doors, looked at signs, and listened to conversations. She saw the control room with its big windows looking out at space. She saw the weapons room with its locked door. Most importantly, she saw the air ducts that ran along the ceiling. The air ducts were just big enough for a small child to crawl through. During the testing, Hannah let the Vorthans think she was just a curious child. She asked simple questions, and acted amazed by their technology. The Vorthans enjoyed showing off to what they thought was a primitive human. This controls the ship's gravity, one Vorthan explained, pointing to a panel, and this controls the air we breathe. Hannah nodded and looked impressed, but inside she was memorizing every button and switch. On the way back to their room, Hannah noticed something important. The guard who had taken them was limping slightly. His left leg seemed weak. She also saw that he kept scratching at a spot on his neck, like something was bothering him. Humans carry diseases that Vorthans can't. to handle. She remembered her father telling her once, "That's why most aliens stay away from us." Back in the room, Hannah shared what she had learned with the others using their silent hand signals. The other children's eyes got wide when they understood what she was planning. The air ducts. She signaled tonight. That night, when the ship was quiet, Hannah put her plan into action. She had noticed that the air duct grate in their room was loose. With help from Hyensu, she managed to remove it without making noise. "I'm going to explore," she whispered to the others. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, start making noise to distract the guards." Hannah pulled herself up into the air duct. It was dark and cramped, but she could fit. She crawled carefully through the metal tunnel, following the path she had memorized during her walk through the ship. The first place she went was the control room. Through a grate in the ceiling, she could see 2 Vorthines working at computers. They were talking about how much money they would make from selling the children. Hannah memorized the layout of all the controls. She saw where they kept the communication equipment. She saw the buttons that controlled the ship's systems. Most importantly, she found the emergency controls that could lock down different parts of the ship. Next, she crawled to the crew quarters. Most of the Vorthins were sleeping. She counted them carefully. 15, just like Jinwoo had said. But she also saw something else. Several of the Vorthians looked sick. They were coughing and scratching at their skin. Human germs, Hannah thought with satisfaction. They're getting sick from being around us. Her last stop was the engine room. It was full of pipes and machines, just like Soman had described. Hannah saw the main power controls and the backup systems. She also found something very interesting. A small access panel that led to the ship's main computer. By the time she crawled back to their room, Hannah had a complete map of the ship in her head. She also had a plan that would let them take control of everything. "Tomorrow night," she whispered to the others, "we're going home." But first they had to survive one more day of pretending to be helpless children. And Hannah was starting to think that might be the hardest part of all. The third morning brought bad news. One of the Vorthins was very sick. Hannah could hear them talking in worried voices outside the children's room. The sick alien was coughing badly and had spots on his skin. "The human germs are working faster than I expected," Hannah whispered to Yuki. But the Vorthins were not stupid. They started wearing masks and gloves when they came near the children. They also began giving the children medicine that tasted terrible. "They're trying to kill the germs," Hyensu said after taking the bitter medicine. "It doesn't matter," Hannah said. "We don't need the germs anymore. Tonight, we use a different kind of weapon." During the day, Hannah used their silent signals to give each child a specific job. Jinwoo would help her get into the air ducts. Yuki would watch for guards. Somin would help distract the Vorthins with her crying if needed. Hyensu would help with the machines. "What about the rest of us?" asked a boy named Taeho. "You're going to help me hunt," Hannah said with her dangerous smile. That afternoon, something happened that changed everything. The sick Vorthin died. Hannah heard the other aliens talking about it in scared voices. They were worried that more of them would get sick. Some wanted to space all the human children to stop the disease from spreading. But Captain Nex, the leader of the ship, said no, that children were worth too much money. Instead, he ordered his crew to wear full protective suits and to give the children stronger medicine. "We reach Kepler Station tomorrow," he told his crew. "Then these disease-carrying Thrax will be someone else's problem." Hannah smiled when she heard this. The Vorthins were scared now. Scared creatures made mistakes. And she was going to use every mistake they made. As night fell, Hannah gathered the children around her. She could see they were all nervous, but they trusted her. Over the past 3 days, she had become more than their leader. She had become their hope. "Remember," she whispered, "we're not trying to hurt them if we don't have to. We just want to go home. But if they try to stop us..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The children understood. Hannah climbed back into the air duct, but this time she wasn't alone. Ginwoo and Somin came with her. They were small enough to fit, and she needed their help. The first stop was the engine room. While Hannah worked on the computer controls, Jinwoo and Somin kept watch. Hannah's small fingers were perfect for reaching the tiny switches inside the control panels. "What are you doing?" Jinwoo whispered. "I'm programming the ship's computer to obey us instead of them," Hannah whispered back. "My dad taught me about computers. He said they're just machines that follow orders. You just have to know how to give the right orders." It took her an hour, but finally she was done. Now she could control the ship's gravity, air, lights, and doors from any computer terminal. The next stop was the weapons room. The door was locked, but Hannah had learned the lock code by watching the Vorthins type it in. Inside, they found alien weapons that looked like metal sticks. "Are we really going to use these?" Somin asked. She looked scared. "Only if we have to," Hannah said. "But it's better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them." They took several of the weapons and hid them in the air ducts throughout the ship. Now they had weapons hidden in every important room. The hardest part came next. They had to get to the control room without being seen. There were always 2 Vorthins on duty there, and they never left their posts. But Hannah had thought of this too. She sent Somin back to their room with a special job. 5 minutes later, all the children in their room started screaming at once. The noise brought guards running. While they were dealing with the frightened children, Hannah and Jinwoo slipped into the control room through the air duct. The control room was empty now, with both guards gone to handle the disturbance. Hannah quickly got to work on the main computer. Her fingers flew over the alien controls as she activated the programs she had installed earlier. Gravity off in crew quarters, she whispered as she typed. Lights off in the hallways. Door locks activated in the weapons room. One by one, she began trapping the Vorthans in different parts of their own ship. The aliens who were sleeping suddenly found themselves floating in zero gravity. The ones walking the halls were plunged into darkness. The ones trying to get weapons found themselves locked out. Emergency alert, came a voice over the ship's speakers. It was Captain Nex. All crew to battle stations. We are under attack. But the captain didn't know that the attackers were already inside his ship, and they were not the weak, helpless children he thought they were. Hannah activated the final part of her plan. Throughout the ship, hidden speakers began playing a recording she had made using the ship's communication system. Attention Vorthans, came Hannah's voice, speaking perfect Vorthan. You have made a mistake. You thought human children were weak. You were wrong. Surrender now, and we will not hurt you. Continue to fight, and you will learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. In the darkness and confusion, the Vorthans began to panic. They could not understand how children had taken control of their ship. They were experienced slavers, and they were being beaten by creatures they thought were pets. Captain Nex's voice came over the radio, full of anger and fear. Find those human brats, kill them all. But it was too late. The hunt had begun, and this time, the humans were the predators. Captain Nex was angry and scared. He floated in his quarters, trying to reach his weapons while the gravity was off. Around him, his crew was in chaos. They were bumping into walls and each other in the darkness. Turn the gravity back on, he shouted into his communicator. I can't, came the reply from his engineer. Someone has locked me out of the main computer. Then fix it. I'm trying, but whoever did this knows our systems better than we do. Captain Nex could not believe what he was hearing. Human children were not supposed to be smart enough to understand alien technology. They were supposed to be simple creatures that cried for their mothers. But as he floated helplessly in his room, he was beginning to understand that everything he knew about humans was wrong. In the control room, Hannah was watching everything happen on the ship's cameras. She could see Vorthans floating in zero gravity, bumping into walls, and calling for help. Some were trapped in rooms with locked doors. Others were lost in dark hallways. This is actually working, Jinwoo whispered. He sounded amazed. Of course, it's working, Hannah said. They never expected us to fight back. They're not ready for it. She pressed another button, and all the lights in the ship began flashing on and off. The flashing lights made it even harder for the Vorthans to see where they were going. Phase 2, Hannah said into the communicator. This sent a signal to the other children throughout the ship. Yuki and Taeho crawled out of air ducts in the engine room. They found 2 Vorthans there, floating helplessly in zero gravity. The aliens were so surprised to see human children that they didn't react fast enough. Yuki pressed a button that locked the engine room doors, trapping the Vorthans inside. In another part of the ship, Somin and Heinsu emerged from hiding. They found the ship's food storage room and began destroying the Vorthans' food supply. If the aliens wanted to eat, they would have to surrender. Captain Nex finally managed to get his communicator working. All crew, report your status. The answers that came back made his blood run cold. Engine room sealed. We're trapped. Food storage destroyed. Weapons room locked. Can't get to the guns. Medical bay doors won't open. Life support systems not responding. One by one his crew was being trapped or cut off from important parts of the ship, and it was all being done by human children who were supposed to be helpless prisoners. Captain, came a voice over the radio. It was the same human child who had spoken before. This is Hannah Kim. I want to talk to you, Captain. Dex was so angry, he could barely speak. You little thrack. What have you done to my ship? I've taken it away from you, Hannah said calmly. Your ship belongs to us now, and so do you. Impossible. You're just children. Yes, we are children, human children. And you should have learned more about humans before you decided to kidnap us. Captain Nex tried to reach the control room, but the doors wouldn't open. For him, he was trapped in his own quarters like a prisoner. Let me out, he shouted. I will, Hannah said over the speaker. But first you need to understand something. We don't want to hurt you. We just want to go home. If you surrender now, and take us back to human space, no one else has to get hurt. Captain Nex laughed, but it was not a happy sound. You think you've won. I have 15 crew members on this ship. You have 12 children. Actually, Hannah said, you have 12 crew members now. 3 of them got sick from our germs and died while you weren't paying attention. And we have something your crew doesn't have. What's that? We have nothing to lose. You took us from our families. You were going to sell us as pets. We're already fighting for our lives. Your crew is just fighting for money, as if to prove a point. Captain Nex heard voices from other parts of the ship. Some of his crew were starting to panic. They wanted to give up and surrender to the children. Captain, maybe we should listen to them, came a voice over the radio. Never, Captain Nex shouted. We don't surrender to prey. But Captain, they're not acting like prey anymore. Hannah was listening to all of this from the control room. She could hear the fear in the Vorthans' voices. They were starting to turn against their own captain. Jinwoo, she said, go tell the others to move to Phase 3. What's Phase 3? Jinwoo asked. Hannah's smile was not friendly at all. We show them what happens when you make human children really angry. She pressed a series of buttons on the control panel. Throughout the ship, the temperature began to drop. At the same time, the air became thinner. The Vorthans would not die, but they would become weak and sleepy. Attention, Captain Nex, Hannah said into the communicator. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you don't, things are going to get much worse for you and your crew. You're bluffing, Captain Nex replied. Children don't kill. Human children don't usually kill, Hannah agreed. But we will if we have to. You taught us that some creatures only understand violence. So if violence is what you want, violence is what you'll get. To prove her point, she activated the ship's emergency sirens. The loud, frightening sound filled every room on the ship, combined with the flashing lights, cold air, and zero gravity. It was like being trapped in a nightmare. One by one, Captain Nex's crew began surrendering. They called on the radio to say they gave up and wanted the human children to stop. They were cold, tired, scared, and confused. They had never been hunted before, and they didn't like it. Captain, came a weak voice over the radio. Please, just give them what they want. I can't take any more of this. You're pathetic. Captain Nex screamed at his crew. They're just children. Children who outsmarted us, came the reply. Children who took over our ship. Children who are treating us like we treated them. Finally, only Captain Nex was left. All of his crew had surrendered. He was alone, trapped in his quarters, while human children controlled his ship. Last chance. Captain, Hannah said. Surrender now, or we'll leave you floating in space while we take your ship home. Captain Nex looked around his quarters. He was cold and tired. The flashing lights were giving him a headache. He could barely breathe in the thin air. And worst of all, he knew he had been beaten by creatures he thought were weak and stupid. I surrender, he said quietly. What was that? Hannah asked. I couldn't hear you. I surrender, Captain, Gex shouted. I surrender to the human children. Take your ship, just make it stop. Good, Hannah said. Welcome to your new life as our prisoner, Captain. I hope you like it better than we liked being yours. 3 days later, a human rescue fleet arrived at the coordinates Hannah had sent them. The lead ship was the battlecruiser New Seoul, commanded by Admiral Sung-Ho Kim. Admiral Kim was Hannah's father. When he had received the distress signal from the Vorthan ship, he could hardly believe it. The message said that human children had taken control of an alien slaver ship and were requesting pickup. Sir, said his communications officer. We're getting a signal from the Vorthan ship. Put it on screen, Admiral Kim ordered. The face that appeared on the screen made Admiral Kim's heart skip. It was his 8-year-old daughter, sitting in what looked like an alien command chair. She was wearing a Vorthan uniform that was much too big for her, and she had a serious expression on her small face. Hello, Dad, Hannah said calmly. We're ready to come home now. Admiral Kim led a boarding party onto the Vorthan ship. What? He found there was beyond anything he could have imagined. The ship was running perfectly, but it was being operated entirely by human children. 12 kids between the ages of 6 and 16 were manning the control stations, monitoring the engines, and keeping watch over their Vorthan prisoners. The Vorthans themselves were locked in their own holding cells, the same cells where they had planned to keep the human children. They looked defeated and ashamed. Some of them were still sick from human germs. Hannah, Admiral Kim said when he reached the control room. What happened here? Hannah climbed down from the captain's chair and ran to hug her father. For the first time in days, she looked like a normal 8-year-old child. They thought we were weak, Dad, she said. They thought human children were just pets that could be bought and sold. So we showed them what human children really are. And what's that? Hannah looked up at her father with those dark, serious eyes. We're the next generation of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And we learned fast. The debriefing took several hours. Admiral Kim and his officers listened in amazement as the children explained what they had done. They had not just escaped from their captors. They had completely taken over a military-grade alien warship using nothing but intelligence, teamwork, and determination. How did you know how to operate their computer systems? Asked Commander Inacio Park, the fleet's intelligence officer. I watched and learned, Hannah said simply. Children are good at learning new things quickly. Adults sometimes forget that. But you're 8 years old. These are advanced alien technologies. Hannah shrugged. Technology is just tools. Tools work the same way no matter who made them. You just have to figure out what they're supposed to do. Jinwoo spoke up. Hannah taught us that being small and young could be advantageous. We could fit in places the adults couldn't go. We could learn their language faster. And they underestimated us because they thought children were weak. We weren't weak, added Yuki. We were just waiting for the right moment to show our strength. Dr. Yoonji Bae, a child psychologist who had come with the rescue fleet, was concerned about the children's mental state. They had been through a terrible experience, but they seemed remarkably calm and confident. How do you feel about what you did? She asked Hannah privately. Hannah thought about the question for a moment. I feel proud, she said finally. We saved ourselves and each other. We proved that humans don't have to be victims. And we taught those aliens an important lesson. What lesson is that? Never hurt a human child unless you're prepared to deal with all of humanity. Because when you threaten our young, you make enemies of our entire species. Dr. Bay was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, do you think what you did was right? I think it was necessary, Hannah replied. They were going to sell us as pets. They were going to separate us from our families forever. We did what we had to do to survive and go home. But you could have just tried to escape. You didn't have to take over their entire ship. Hannah looked at Dr. Bay with an expression that was far too serious for an 8-year-old. If we had just escaped, they would have come after us again. They would have captured other human children. By taking their ship and defeating them completely, we sent a message to all the aliens in the galaxy. What message? That human children are not prey, we're predators. The news of what the children had done spread quickly throughout human space and beyond. The story of 12 human children who had captured an alien warship became famous across the galaxy. But the real impact was much deeper. For the first time, alien species had to seriously consider what humans were capable of. If human children could do this, what could human adults do when they were angry? Several alien governments sent messages to Earth, apologizing for any past conflicts and requesting peaceful relations. The Vorth Enslaving Guild officially disbanded and promised never to target human colonies again. Most importantly, human colonies throughout the galaxy began implementing new training programs for their children. They were called Hannah Protocols, and they taught young humans how to recognize threats, work together under pressure, and use their intelligence as a weapon. 6 months later, Hannah was back home on New Busan Colony. She was playing in the same backyard where she had been taken, pushing the same toy truck. But she was not the same girl who had been kidnapped. Her father found her there one evening, watching the sunset. Do you ever think about what happened on that ship? He asked. Every day, Hannah said. But not in a bad way. It taught me something important. What's that? Hannah looked up at him with a smile. It taught me that humans are special. Not because we're the strongest or the fastest or the biggest, but because we never give up. We adapt, we learn, we work together, and we protect each other, no matter what. She went back to playing with her truck, but then she added quietly, and it taught me that when someone threatens a human child, they're not just fighting that child, they're fighting all of humanity because we take care of our own. Admiral Kim watched his daughter play and felt proud and worried at the same time. Hannah was still a child, but she was also something more now. She was a symbol of humanity's true nature. The aliens who had thought humans were weak prey animals had learned the truth. Humans were not prey, they were the galaxy's apex predators, and their children were not weak links to be exploited. They were the next generation of the most dangerous species in the universe. Epilogue: years later, when Hannah Kim was grown up and serving as a captain in the human space navy, she would sometimes receive messages from alien species who had heard the story of what she did as a child. Most of the messages were respectful, requests for peaceful contact, but occasionally she would get a threatening message from some alien who thought humans were still easy targets. To these messages, Captain Kim would always send the same reply. My name is Hannah Kim. When I was 8 years old, I took control of an alien warship with 11 other human children. We did it using nothing but our intelligence and our determination to go home. If you think adult humans are easier targets than human children, you are welcome to test that theory. But remember, you have been warned. No alien species ever took her up on that offer. The galaxy had learned its lesson about underestimating humanity, and they had learned it from a child who refused to be anyone's pet.